just leave, yeah, you can go ahead. We'll leave, this is mine, so just leave that.
Hi guys, I'm John Petchuk, and those don't know me, I'm a member of the Council of Community Living Ontario. Welcome to the PETC section and Ordering Good Life, Community, Employment, and other access full of any rich life sessions. Our speakers this afternoon are Joel Dell, Joanne, and John Policicchio. We hope you enjoy the session. Hope that information present continue. The sport will build our knowledge and understanding. This session will be webcast, and this proudly sponsored by Quality Service, Inc., the creators of AIM's all information management system.
Thank you. Just also by way of introducing the session, my name is Peter Sproul. I'm the Executive Director at Community Living Kingston and District and the Chair of the Provincial Executive Directors Coordinating Committee, or the PEDCC, and it's our pleasure to bring this session to you this afternoon. And just to give you a little bit of a context as to why the PEDCC really wanted to organize this session and focus on employment and other community participation and engagement supports. As many of you will know, earlier this year there was considerable discussion about the whole sheltered workshop issue and moving to employment supports and more inclusive types of supports because of events in Ottawa, I think right here in Hamilton, and elsewhere as well. And so it became even more prominent on the radar, not that it was ever off the radar, but the discussions about employing strategic directions for organizations and supporting people to move to more inclusive types of outcomes really got more attention and a lot more discussion. So we wanted to continue on with that, and the PEDCC thought this would be a really good forum to be able to present some, again, some initiatives and strategic directions that would help organizations that are looking to develop those kinds of supports. So we're very fortunate to have three folks here who have considerable experience and skill and wisdom in this area to talk to us today. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before I hand it over to them. Joe Dale is the Executive Director of the Ontario Disability Employment Network's Centre for Excellence in Employment Services for People with a Disability. Joe has worked in the field of disability for over 35 years and spent much of that time addressing issues related to employment for people with disabilities. Before becoming the Executive Director, Joe operated Vision Consulting, assisting both businesses and not-for-profit organizations interested in helping people with disabilities obtain jobs in the workforce. Prior to this, he was with Community Living Ontario as the Director of Membership Services. He's a member of former Lieutenant Governor David C. Onley's accessibility team and participates on several provincial consultation teams related to policy creation and focus on disability matters. In 2012, he received Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal for significant achievement and remarkable service for his work in the disability employment field. In 2014, Joe was a recipient of the Lieutenant Governor's Community Volunteer Award, and most recently he received the 2015 AbleWorks Advocacy for Employment Award. It's also my pleasure to introduce John Policicchio. John is the Executive Director of Community Living Algoma. He has held the position of Executive Director since April of 2001. John has been employed within developmental services for the past 26 years and has held various senior management level positions, including Chief Administrative Officer and Chief of Services. He's very proud of the agency's accomplishments, including 4-year accreditation status through the Council on Quality and Leadership, the shift from traditional behavioral treatment and supports to positive approaches, the overall reduction in group living spaces from 103 spaces to 65 spaces, and the recent transformation of a sheltered workshop and day programs to community employment and community engagement for people with a developmental disability. I'd also like to introduce Joanne Demick. Joanne Demick is the Executive Director of Community Living Parry Sound. Joanne is currently a member of the PEDCC and co-chair of the Inspired by Our Grassroots Steering Committee. She's also a member of the Provincial Housing Task Force. Joanne's career has been fully focused in developmental services, and she is passionate about the rights movement to full citizenship for people with disabilities. Joanne is an avid runner and is hoping to compete in a second half marathon this spring with her daughter. It's my pleasure to introduce your panel today.
Thanks very much, Peter. My name's Joe Dale, and I'm going to kick things off. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces in the room, lots of old friends, and even my wife. So I don't know if that counts as a friend or not, but I think it does. Today it does. Today it's a good day. I also want to bring regrets from Janet Cleese, who was to join us today. She's had a family medical emergency that she's had to deal with, and she was really disappointed she wasn't able to come today. But I'm sure John and Joanne are going to hold up some of her end of things when it comes to the community alternatives. But I've been asked to kick things off a little bit and do a little bit of an overview of kind of the lay of the land when it comes to employment opportunities for people who have an intellectual disability. And I'm going to start with just a few basic principles. These are principles that I believe in and subscribe to, and that I think speak to the whole employment first movement that's going on around North America. But the starting point is that all people can and should work to the best of their capacity and should be supported properly to do so. Second thing that I believe in is that employment for adults who have an intellectual disability is the quickest and most direct route to inclusion. If you have a job, you have a lot more that goes with it: social networks, income, independence, self-worth, everything that comes with inclusiveness. And I guess the third thing is that I believe that these factors really should be no different for people who have an intellectual disability, that they should be able to have the same opportunities as the rest of us in the community. I'm going to go through just a few background data and information for the sake of setting this groundwork. In 2003, we did a study in the southwest part of Ontario where we tracked 2,500 people who had disabilities who were all looking for jobs. So this is 25 people from London to Windsor to Sarnia, Tillsonburg, all the communities in and around that area. And it was all types of disabilities, and they were all accessing employment agencies looking for help to get into the workforce. And what we found out of that 2,500 people was that people with intellectual disabilities were the most successful at finding jobs. 64% of people with intellectual disabilities found jobs. The next highest disability group was about 20% lower than that, was people with mental health disabilities. And then people with hearing disabilities at about 30% finding jobs. So it was a significant differential that we saw for people with intellectual disabilities at finding jobs. But more sustainably, it was important that 54% of those people with intellectual disabilities looking for jobs were able to retain those jobs beyond 12 and 24 months of duration. So they were able to sustain themselves in the workforce as well at a higher proportion than other disability groups. In fact, the next highest group was people with mental health disabilities at only 25% sustainability in the job, in the workforce. So, you know, it's almost counterintuitive to us, and when we talked to government back in 2002, 2003 about this, they were quite astonished at these facts because they had seen it quite differently, that their feeling at the time was that people with intellectual disabilities really couldn't work and didn't really want to. But the data showed something quite differently. Now, there are some challenges in this scenario. The first thing we found is that across the board for people with disabilities, that 66% of those people were working in the sales and services sector. But for people with intellectual disabilities, it jumped to 80%. So 80% of people with disabilities were working in McDonald's and Tim Hortons and sales and service sector, retail and fast food. In the general population in the same region of Ontario at the same time, the stat was 24.5% of the regular population was working in the sales and services sector. So you might ask yourself, well, why is that such a big issue? And I think it's a big issue because what we found was the average that people were working was about 15 hours a week. They were making about 50 cents an hour above minimum wage and receiving no benefits. So it had really become a bit of a ghetto of all of the jobs being in one sector, all having some significant limitations. Now, for some people to start part-time is okay if it's starting point, not the ending point. But what we found overwhelmingly for people with intellectual disabilities is that it was the start and the end. So this is William, who works in the Homestyle Cafe in North Bay. And this is a very typical scenario. William working part-time hours, minimum wage, and being on the job for 7 or 8 years. And his job essentially, and I'm sure you've seen it at your local Tim Hortons and so on, it's the lot and lobby kind of job, cleaning the tables, bussing tables, doing garbage, dishes, sweeping floors, and so on. By comparison, one of the interesting things is at the time was my sister's boyfriend worked at Molson's Breweries as in HR. And they had a janitor at HR, or in the Molson Breweries, whose job was to look after their self-serve cafeteria. And he bussed the tables, mopped the floors, put the garbage out, restocked the self-serve machines, and did the dishes. Who wants to guess at what his hourly wage was? Anybody? Shout it out. $27.50 an hour. His T4 slip for the year was $116,000 because of overtime. But my brother-in-law said no one had ever approached Molson Breweries about hiring someone with a disability. And so we need to think about how we do our job development and how we look for jobs for people with disabilities to be more strategic, because there is much more out there. And one of the organizations we worked with at the time was Community Living London, and they wanted to look at how they were doing business and try to change what was happening. So they looked at their own data and results and compared it to the averages for the region. In the first year, they were exactly right on the money. We said, well, what do we need to do to change this? And they essentially decided that of their employment staff, each staff member was going to take 1 hour a week to look in a different work sector: health sciences, office and administration, manufacturing, IT and technology. 1 hour a week to look in those other sectors. And a year later we came back and we saw a significant change in the results that they achieved for people. So we're going to show a quick video and see what that looks like.
Police service.
Our mailroom is actually a viable part of our operation, and without somebody who takes it seriously and does a good job, we would have a lot of problems. Mail would be going to the wrong people or not meeting the timelines that we need to meet. I've been here now 7 years, and I can't remember one time when Heather's ever made a mistake. So I would say Heather performs her job exceptionally well.
Maddie has been an incredible member of our team, and actually, in fact, and I truly believe that she is a member of our team and has done incredible things for us. I saw a passion in her eyes related to what we did here. When we interviewed her, it was clear this was something she absolutely wanted to do.
Kevin, being the social person that he is, has actually invited people into his own personal environment. And so he's really ingrained himself in the organization. And I think if you talk to any of our employees, 820 employees, there's more than one person named Kevin in this building. But if you mention Kevin, everybody will know what Kevin you're talking about.
He's a hard worker. He works so hard. And it's a busy facility, to take care of all the customers that we have and to get their cars washed and try to get them washed on time is very difficult. And it's nice to have someone like Robert here who's committed to doing a great job.
Heather works primarily in our mailroom, so she looks after all our mail that goes out to clients, all our mail that goes out to insurance companies, and to our third-party vendors. Heather also looks after some kitchen duties and is very much proud of the job she does. She does a really great job, and she's very friendly to everyone. And like I said, she's built a lot of great relationships here.
Cleaning our facility, we call that disease management because we're a veterinarian facility, and cleaning actually maintains and eliminates and sterilizes our facility. And so she eliminates and sterilizes our facility. And so she does a couple of the jobs related around cleaning that are critical to the success of our facility. And once we sat down and had that explanation as to the impact of what she does to our facility, she recognized that a dog could get sick or a cat get sick if she doesn't do what she needs to do absolutely right. So she has exceeded every one of our expectations. I really do believe that in the roles that she does and the job she does with our facility, she does them better because she does them with a passion that I honestly would find hard to believe I could get from anybody else.
Well, Kevin's position actually has evolved over the last number of years. So initially, we were looking for an opportunity for an individual to take care of our documents. Obviously, in the police service, there are a great deal of documents that we need to destroy. As that employment opportunity expanded, we realized that there were other skill sets that Kevin had that could be used in other areas. So not only was he handling documents that needed to be destroyed, we also had him now documents that needed to be collated and tabulated. And so he evolved into that position as well. There's been growth for Kevin and growth for the organization.
You know, Robert's our car washer. He will wash all of our customer vehicles that come in for service. There's a lot of walking involved. So he's finding the vehicles, he's taking them through the car wash, he's making sure that the cars are in good condition before and after he takes them through, and then gets them into a delivery area for our customers. Robert has been very independent, and he's been doing that work himself, so it's freed up the time that we've had in the shop.
She's good to everyone. Like she doesn't discriminate against anyone, and she treats everyone equal. And because of that, I think that our staff have become more inclusive of people with differences. And people don't think twice about the fact that Heather is different than other people because we don't think of her as different. Heather's just part of our team. She does a great job. And I would say that the culture here has changed, having Heather within it.
We've been here 5 years. And so we're a new business. And when we brought Maddie on, we were new. We were 3 years old. We ubbed and hawed and, should we bring someone else on? And we thought, well, we need the role done. And so it was really a business decision. This hire was a hire. Had nothing to do with any disability, had nothing to do with the challenge. It had everything to do with the fact that we had these roles that needed to be done. Being a young business, we took a risk, but it turned out to not be a risk at all. It was absolutely one of the best decisions we've made.
One of the things that we wanted to look at was stability in that particular position. Definitely has been an asset having someone like Robert here with a disability. The job fits his skills. He works well, he works hard at his job. It's a plus having someone here that every day, always showing up every single day to work.
The stumbling block is, there's a number of them, hours of work. Does the employee become an employee? What are the issues around workplaces with unions and associations? And what I say is put all that aside. Is there a position, and are the skill sets that position requires available through Community Living London? Look at that first, and then work out the other details. And that's what we did. Oftentimes we think there are stumbling blocks to employment when there really aren't. And so first ask the question, do we need the individual? Does this individual fit? And then everything else will, quite frankly, fall into place.
Of charity in that video at all. It's all about good business and good relationships in business and doing better business by being an inclusive employer. And I think that's the shift that we see happening in the field of disability and employment right now, is that businesses are understanding that there's an opportunity to do better business by becoming inclusive in our employment strategies. And those of us who work in the service sector have to get our heads around that to ensure we're not pushing charity when there's obviously business opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities, and things are changing significantly in the last few years. First of all, obviously people who have a disability are more included in society generally. There is an increased awareness and willingness in the business community, and I'm going to talk about that a little more in a minute. There's still a long ways to go, but there is a lot more willingness in the business community. And more people who have a disability are interested in working. And this is some of the opportunities. But there's some very practical opportunities for us right now as well. So for example, whether it's labor shortages or skills mismatch or whatever they're calling it, businesses are losing out on not filling vacancies and not being able to fulfill their work requirements. And in fact, the Conference Board of Canada has cited that there'll be a 1 million worker shortfall in Canada by 2020, and that's going to cause a drop in GDP of 1.3%. Now, I don't understand GDP that well, I'll be very honest about it, but business sure does. And they understand that if there's a drop in GDP of 1.3%, that's going to affect standard of living for all of us. So there's desperate need to fill workforce shortages. But in 2013, the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses surveyed their membership, and 34% reported a shortage of skilled labor as their number 1 business problem, and 13% a shortage of unskilled labor as their number 1 business problem already. So these skills shortages and labor shortages are very real in the business community, and it's making business think differently about how they can fulfill their labor requirements by tapping into demographics that they previously have ignored. And that creates opportunity for us. The final thing was the federal government's restriction on the foreign worker program. So these are all things that are problems for business, but opportunities for us when it comes to helping people with disabilities get into the workforce. If you can imagine it, in Alberta, they've closed Tim Hortons stores that pay $18 to $20 an hour because they can't find staff. Imagine that. And yet they have people in Alberta with disabilities who are not working that they're not tapping into. So this is our opportunity. And it is changing. And I'll just a little bit of some of the evidence that has come my way recently. TD Canada Trust, of the big 5 banks, they're the number 1 when it comes to inclusive hiring practices, bar none. And right now they're launching a pilot program in Western Canada and BC that they've partnered with the Canadian Down Syndrome Association, all based on job carving positions. And if it works, they're going to roll it across the country. They're tackling this issue on their own with very little intervention. A year and a half ago, I was approached by the Toronto Region Conservation Authority. They hired 90 students every summer. They wanted to know how they could get 30% of those students to be comprised of students who have a disability. They came to us looking for help on how they would do that. Sodexo, probably one of the largest companies in Canada that nobody's ever heard of, 150,000 workforce, top Fortune 50 companies in Canada. They do all of the cafeterias in high schools and industrial buildings, commercial buildings. They do building maintenance, all sorts of contractual work. They did a pitch to RBC in Toronto. Canada. They were proposing to take over the building maintenance for 50 of the RBC's buildings in Toronto GTA region. They were going to have 1 person with a disability in every building, and they were asking us how they would tap in and find these people. So these are companies coming to us now. Drake Personnel, they came to me and said they wanted to understand disability better because their clients were demanding it. They wanted to see people with disabilities in those people that were being put forward as job candidates. And lots of other things. Deloitte, we've been approached by a major hotel chain. We've been approached by a major financial institution that wants to catch up to TD, looking for help in how they can get people with disabilities into their workforce. So those of us who've been in the field for any length of time, for the last 30 years or since the mid-'80s when we first launched the supported employment concept in Ontario, it's felt like we've been pushing a rope up a hill. Today, that rope's being pulled up the hill by business, and I'm concerned that we may not be ready to fulfill all the needs that business has with candidates and with the proper support services. And that's a challenge for us, but as I said earlier, also a great opportunity. So one of the things we've learned in the last 5 years is that we need to reposition ourselves and our organizations to be seen as a resource, not only to people, but also as a resource to business. Because if we can help business meet their needs, then they're going to keep coming back to us for more and more candidates and for our help to include people with disabilities in the workforce. Just there's some leading examples right now. Some of you have probably heard about Mark Wafer, who owns the Tim Hortons franchises here in Toronto. A full 16% of his workforce is comprised of people with disabilities in all positions, entry level right through to and including managers. And what he says is that his bottom line is much better by having people with disabilities in the workforce. All those things you saw in the video, greater dedication, lower absenteeism, lower accident ratings, all those things are true in his business. His turnover rate is 38%. His competitors in Tim Hortons that don't hire people with disabilities is 110% in the GTA. And he thinks it costs him $4,000 per replacement. So if he does exactly the same business as his competitors that are 2 blocks away, he's more profitable. What he says is that he doesn't have to supervise his employees who have a disability. He has supervisors and managers to supervise the non-disabled workers in his business. Because once people have learned the job, their dedication and their astuteness to the job is unfathomable. So it's just over and over again. Walgreens, now this isn't something that I advocate for, but as a business example, Walgreens is the largest pharmacy retailer in the United States. They have a couple of distribution centers, about 26 of them. They opened one in Connecticut where 47% of the workforce is comprised of people with disabilities. And I had a chance to go to Connecticut to see this place in operation. We saw people with autism and Down syndrome and intellectual disabilities and physical disabilities all through the plant, and it was seamless. But what's interesting, this plant opened in 2007. They've had the highest productivity rating every single year since opening of the whole distribution chain of 27 warehouses. Not only that, but 40% lower accident ratings, 67% reduction in medical treatment, 63% reduction in absenteeism, and overall, other than payroll, 78% lower employee costs. Now, as I say, I'm not advocating anybody should have a 47% workforce comprised of people with disabilities. You know, the demographic in our general population is 16%, and that would be marvelous. But when you think about how businesses can tap in and what this tells business owners and operators about the benefits of hiring people with disabilities, it's pretty indisputable. They've now allocated 20% of all hires corporate-wide to be dedicated to people with disabilities. All the retail operations, their corporate offices, everywhere. And in fact, in their warehouses, they've surpassed that across the board, and they're actually competing with each other now to improve their productivity by being more inclusive in their hiring practices. So these are the business examples that we're seeing that are changing the way we think about people with disability in the workforce and really driving us towards that value proposition and how we position people as being reliable and dependable, motivated, greater dedication and employer loyalty, lower turnover and absenteeism, improved morale and customer relations, creating that market niche about how you support people with disabilities who want to do business with you, and thinking outside of the box, because we often hear over and over again that people with disabilities have different strategies to overcome hurdles and problems than the rest of the team, but those are valuable skills in a team situation. So I wanted to just put that out to kind of give some foundation to what we're looking at right now when it comes to employment opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities. And I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to talk now about agency transition and how you move from segregated sheltered workshops and segregated programs to community employment and other alternatives in the community. John.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, the people that are here. And I also want to say thank you to those who are participating via webcast, and a special hello to those folks in Sault Ste. Marie that are tuned in. I'm John Policicchio, as Peter mentioned, with Community Living Algoma. And I'm going to be sharing with you our experience. I'm sure there's others in the room that would also be good panel members in terms of their movement of services and support in a more inclusive manner. But our experience is fairly recently, so I think it was just it was timely that I was selected to sit on this panel. But I do thank Joe and Joanne for the opportunity to participate on this panel with them. I want to start with just the resource materials. I think it's important to note that things don't just happen, that there's a lot of thinking that goes into the work before you start to move and shift from a program model system thinking to more person-centered thinking. And we've had the opportunity as an organization to bring in some very valuable resources that have helped us along the way. But I've also listed some reading materials that really helped shape our thinking. And it was really resources that are more broad in nature than just about people with disabilities. It's about all people. One of them that I mentioned up there is a recent study by the Department of Psychology at Brigham Young University. And the research study is entitled Loneliness and Isolation as Risk Factors. And this kind of was a real shocker for me. Although I'd heard bits and pieces of the impact of loneliness and and isolation and the impact on just the general population, this research looks specifically at the health impact. And the researchers predict that loneliness will be the next major health epidemic in the world, that loneliness and isolation is as much a killer as obesity, smoking, and alcoholism. So you'll see things in your respective communities of public health agencies who are, talking about quit smoking and obesity or alcoholism. But loneliness and isolation isn't referred. And what we know about people with intellectual disabilities, they experience that quite frequently. So again, a piece of research that really helped shape our thinking to say it's time to move forward. Also, we've done a lot of work with Dr. David Petoniak, and if David was in front of this audience today, he would say that there's a big difference between coverage and relationships. We keep giving people coverage when people desperately need to be in relationships, and if you really transform move from a sheltered workshop to employment and community engagement, social capital for people in valued roles in community, you will start to see what happens when people really engage in meaningful relationships in community. People's lives change tremendously, and hopefully I'll have enough time to share some of those stories today. There's also some research that was done by Dr. Kenneth Palche at the Stanford Center for Research in Disease. And again, a piece of research that applies to all people. And Dr. Kenneth Palche said, a sense of belonging appears to be a basic human need, as basic as food and shelter. In fact, social support may be one of the critical elements distinguishing those who remain healthy from those who become ill. And this statement for our organization has been profound. And I call our organization a work in progress. We're not there by any means as everybody experiencing best possible quality of life, but we're certainly chiseling away and repositioning our resources to get there. But what's critical about this statement from our perspective is that we are zeroing in now and paying close attention to people who are not healthy and what social relationships and social connections do they have in community. And I don't think it'd be anybody's surprise, or a surprise to anyone in the room, but what the results are clearly demonstrating that there is a linkage between being unhealthy and not having connections and social relationships. We've also done a lot of work with Dr. Al Condalucci on social capital and community engagement. And Al is someone who really works with the research from Dr. Robert Putnam. And also another key piece that influenced or really was the catalyst for our thinking with our sheltered workshop was the Human Rights Tribunal ruling here in Ontario, the Gary versus Janice Joan Inc., which again, a person with a disability being paid less than people that she was working with that were earning minimum wage or better. And, the impact to this was significant because I know when we were meeting with families and sharing with them this exact ruling, the board was confronted with, well, what's the liability that an organization's confronted with if we are running sheltered workshops, paying stipends less than minimum wage, and one of those individuals and or their family members decides to launch a lawsuit against our organization. I understand Janice Joan Inc. declared bankruptcy. Two key pieces were, if I think this is important to note here, the need for vision and courage. And this is at all levels, not just at, I mean board levels, at executive director levels, leadership levels, but also at the support worker level. This is not easy work to move from program models of support to more individualized approaches, but it's work that needs to be done, and there's a lot of courage that's required to move forward. hopefully by the time I'm done my presentation and the panel's done the overall presentation, I just want to leave the group with this particular question. Why would we not do the work necessary to connect people with their community, support people to develop friendships, and help people find jobs in the community? It's something that hopefully you can take back home and to really think of how you would respond to that particular question. So again, I'm here to talk about the transition of our sheltered workshop, and also our day programs were included in this, to more community employment and or community engagement. One thing that we were prepared for was the fact that not everybody in the sheltered workshop was going to land a job in the community. And you know, it was something that I think we looked at honestly, and in reality we knew we were going to deal with it. So it was really important that we looked at the blending of both the transition of the sheltered workshop and our traditional day programs to make it work. One thing that was something we had to tackle quickly was, well, what if we end up with people who are going to end up landing with jobs in the community? We needed to revitalize our employment services area, and I thank Joe Dale and Mark Wafer. We had invited them to town in conjunction with the Autism Society. It was a presentation primarily geared to families, and Joe and Mark had a profound impact in our thinking that after that day in February, I believe it was February 2014, that we decided we were going to make our employment services an area of specialization, something we want to get really good at, because the results for people are tremendous when they have purchasing power, when they have status in their community. It really does impact their lives in a positive way. We also wanted to focus on after school and summer jobs within the community, primarily for youth. I don't know how many agencies in the room are focused on employment for youth, but here we're thankful for Bob Van Sickle and Community Living Sarnia Lambton and the work that they've done. We ended up purchasing their toolkit, and in a very short period of time, we didn't have very much time to launch this past summer, but hopefully I'll be able to share some of the successes we've experienced in that area. And I believe Joanne has experienced tremendous success as well. Last I was talking to Bob, I believe had 86 youth in summer employment this past summer. So we decided to say no to stipends, yes to competitive wages. One thing that's been instrumental in our journey to move forward as well has been the Ministry's Employment and Modernization Fund. We were a recipient of some one-time funding for a 2-year period, which is certainly something that I'm a strong believer in as we embark and engage in challenging change within our organizations, that, you know, that sometimes that little bit of an investment is enough for you to keep things going but start tackling some of the challenges of a change process. And we have found that those resources have been very valuable. So a lot of what I'm saying as well is that there are lots of resources in Ontario to tap into, primarily if you are going to embark on a journey of transitioning from a sheltered workshop in your day programs to competitive employment and community engagement. I have kind of the story, and it goes through some very specific timelines, but I'm just going to highlight some points just in the interest of time. But we started working on the thinking, and again, the Gary Human Rights Tribunal was certainly something that we will admit was a catalyst, and we all need something to push us over the edge. I know yesterday when we were talking with Joanne and Parry Sound, their experience was that an environmental issue, and that was enough for them to revisit and say, do we really want to be doing this work? So sometimes you've got to look at these situations that arise as opportunities to really move it forward. So although I shared with you all that research, which was really profound and influenced our decision to move forward, this was kind of what nudged it over the edge for us to say it's time to move on. A key piece in May was, again, as we were doing, as staff were preparing the work here, we needed to get our board to really understand the impact of this decision. As many of you involved with sheltered workshops, there's going to be a lot of history with them, families on the grassroots who had put these workshops in place with good intentions. We've continued them as organizations, and all of a sudden we're saying we're not going to be in the sheltered workshop business any longer. So our board got involved, and we presented to them the plan on how we were going to move from the sheltered workshop into community employment and community engagement. And just here, it's probably important to note that it was really getting the board to approve the guiding principles of the transition. So to give the direction of what it was that, and how we were going to do the work. And just some highlights of this were decisions like there'd be no loss in overall volume of supports to people. So as we move forward, nobody was going to lose services or supports, because that's an assurance families and people are going to be looking for. Also, we are a unionized environment, not that that's good or bad, but just we needed to factor that in. And as an organization, we've demonstrated over the years that change doesn't necessarily result in job loss, and change doesn't necessarily result in a need for additional resources. It takes time to reposition your resources, and one-time investments are certainly beneficial, but change can move forward, and you can still look at securing employment. We just needed, the change process is really about supporting people in a different way, and we wanted to make sure we had enough staff support resources to be able to make the transition very effectively and very smoothly. In June of 2014, again, information sharing meetings, what was critical in the guidelines as well, it was our communication. Let's be honest and transparent. Get out there and talk to families on a very regular basis, not just you meet with them once and then you don't meet with them again. Meetings with staff. I remember meeting with the staff teams impacted by the transition at least every 30 days, attending meetings, making sure that they were fully informed of what was going on, getting their feedback, and working it as a process where all stakeholders were significantly engaged. The other thing in our situation was anytime we embark on a change process through our collective agreement, we have a 90-day clause. And sometimes, I know people probably cringe, well, it takes 90 days. I thought when we were in bargaining and this clause was introduced, we're so slow with change processes, 90 days is more than adequate to give notice to a union in order to implement change. So we kind of looked at this as a good clause because it's our keeps us honest clause. So you engage with your unions in discussions about the change process, because we never implement change quickly in our sector anyway. I think what was interesting, I think on this point as well, one thing that the board had committed to, and we had to engage in conversations with our union about, was we were very much interested as an organization employing people with disabilities. Again, you got to put your money where your mouth is. You're going to be equipping your job coaches to go out into community to seek employment opportunities. Am I doing okay with time? To seek employment opportunities. But then the first question you might get from an employer is, so what does your agency do, and what's your track record on employing people with disabilities? So we're using this as a means to collect and compile information. Again, Joe used those statistics. Mark Wafer talks about the statistics. That's what the business community needs to see. What's the success of employing people with disabilities? So we entered into an agreement with the union that we would employ a maximum of 25 people with disabilities through a 3-year transition process. And that's going slow. I'll share some of the results of that a little later. July and August, just keep moving forward. Again, sheltered workshops, department by department. We didn't say everything's going to happen at one point in time. We really moved it slowly. But ironically, and I would take this position again, move it very slow, go at it one person at a time, one department at a time. But once it starts to unravel, the only term I have for it is it's infectious. People with disabilities, when they see their peers pursuing employment or something meaningful in the community, they want out that quick. And what we realized, and I'll share our success, we'd given ourselves 3 years. So technically the work started September, October by the time we did the 90-day notice and the on-the-ground work transition. But in under a year, our sheltered workshop no longer exists, and we had given ourselves a 3-year window. So it is very infectious when people start to see their peers with smiles on their faces, people experiencing their community for the first time and going back and sharing stories. It's quite a remarkable experience. I also wanted to note at this point, Deputy Minister Janet Menard yesterday did talk about employment, and that it's important that our organizations take a very close look inward, and are we employing people with disabilities? 5? Okay. So I'm going to move, as I mentioned, the timelines are there, and as I mentioned, you can say that your best laid work plan sometimes is your worst laid plan, because you're moving at the speed that people with disabilities and their families allow you to move. So it moved very quickly, but in approximately 1 year's time, we went from having a sheltered workshop to not having a sheltered workshop in place. The transformation impacted 95 people. These were not all individuals at our sheltered workshop location. Specifically at that location, there were 47 people. When I started with the organization in 1989, there were over 130 people attending our sheltered workshop. It was a very crowded place. But, you know, it served a purpose, obviously, back in those days. But when we look back now, it's kind of shocking to be in that kind of put that many people in that kind of a situation. We had 17 individuals who were working in the high school cafeterias, 7 people at a recycling depot, and 24 people in unique arrangements. The unique arrangements was what we thought was creative. So, you know, you go to an employer and you say, we'll send you a bill for X amount of dollars and we'll pay the people $2 an hour, those kinds of unique arrangements. And I kind of flagged that because, you know, I hear a lot about social enterprise, and I would just be very cautious. Is that real employment? Every person impacted by the transition is being supported, and that was a critical guideline that our board put in place, that there was going to be nobody who was going to lose out. And in fact, people are doing things today that they had never experienced before in their life. Our success, mentioned earlier, we had 17 people in the high schools. Chartwell Foods runs our high school cafeterias. Hired 6 people at minimum wage. This was a shock to us because we were expecting 0 people with disabilities to be hired. So these were people that were now employed by Chartwell. We were no longer in a purchase of service arrangement with Chartwell. They employed these 6 individuals, paid them minimum wage, and that continued on until this current year, where there was a merger of our 2 Catholic high schools. So now there's only 1 cafeteria. So they reduced the number of people, obviously. Even people without disabilities were reduced, but they're now employing 3 people, have continued into employment with Chartwell Foods in the high school cafeterias this current year. 2 people that were in our sheltered workshop were hired to maintain the Sioux Minor Baseball Association ball fields. This is quite a remarkable story. A lot of baseball tournaments were hosted in our community, and teams and coaches from other communities that came into our town were trying to find out who was maintaining the field because they wanted to bring these people to their community. And so, and they work alongside summer students and other people who are employed by the Baseball Association. So it's not just people with disabilities. And 2 people are hired at Canadian Tire performing yard maintenance, shopping carts, and carry out for customers. How am I? Winding up. Okay, so again, just on the successes, I'll wrap up with that. 5 people are employed in a very unique arrangement with the Ministry of Natural Resources. We're trying to unbundle that. Our focus is trying to get the Ministry of Natural Resources to employ the people at some point in time. But if you recall, our plan was really a 3-year plan. So we're working with the ministry. We want to make sure those opportunities are there and not close any doors. But hopefully, you know, in the next couple of years, we're going to be able to finalize an arrangement with the ministry on that. 5 people are employed at the recycling depot at the current time, and this is a partnership between the municipality and CLA. This is, again, one of those social enterprises, and we're working very hard to see if there's a way that the municipality either takes it over or if there's a private sector recycling company taking it over, trying to at some point offload it as a place where only people with developmental disabilities are working, but they're earning minimum wage at the current time. Probably the biggest success, as I mentioned earlier, was the summer employment, and that's a key because for us, we didn't have any youth working for a lot of years. And it was kind of a novel concept when we heard about it, but you kind of look back and you go, we missed the boat. We've been missing the boat for a lot of years. If you want to be successful in employment, you got to get to people that are 15, 16, just like when did we get our first jobs. And we ended up with 3 summer jobs this past year, and the success was remarkable. One gentleman has been offered after school hours and weekend work since his summer employment has ended. Another gentleman has been offered the job for next summer at a local golf course. And one gentleman, he wrote it out, but we had 2 weeks left to go and he decided to quit. But we've been able to maintain the confidence of that employer, was very impressed, and that employer is offered to come back on for next year's summer employment. The important thing for us here was to create the story because families are probably the biggest barrier for youth being employed. And we have some remarkable stories, which of course I can't get into due to time, but how these families are responding and how We've done surveys with them, and they can't believe it. There's a mother that continues to cry. She can't believe that her 20-year-old son ended up with a job, and her 22-year-old son didn't, without a disability, wasn't working this past summer. And we, Community Living Algoma now employs 6 people with intellectual disabilities at $11 an hour, doing our janitorial services for our main office. What are those not employed doing? I think Joanne's going to talk more about her agency experience in the community engagement, but this was also an area as we were transitioning that we felt we needed to be prepared to address. So I won't get into that. And then I did have some photos of people, and you can just see the smiles on their face. We've gone from people who were saying they were bored to now they don't stop talking about their experiences. The key is people need to be presented with opportunities and experiences, because showing up at the same place for 30 years really isn't about opportunities and experiences. And the barrier should not be, well, people don't know what to do, so what do we do with them? You try things with people and you revisit things. And so we're very much a work in progress, opportunities and experiences, and we have seen the success and the tremendous success in people working in their community earning $11 or better. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much to Joe and Peter for inviting me to join this panel today. And I would like to apologize to anyone who attended our session this morning, as some of the information might be a little bit repetitive, but I will try to mix it up a little bit. So, and I'm also technically challenged, so hopefully this will work. There. So why is employment important? It's one person at a time, it's person-directed, and it's individualized. It's abilities-focused and strength-based. It promotes the development of rich social networks. It creates socially valued roles for people within their community. It increases the person's economic status and sense of self-worth. And finally, financially, people are better able to pursue their own personal goals. So Community Living Parry Sound has made employment a priority and a specialization, creating a fee-for-service business called Link, and it is a business. We are an ODSP employment service provider and have been so since 2006. So funding is performance-based. If we are not successful, we are not funded. So it's really important to us that we work very cooperatively and collaboratively with our community, with employers, and the priority is doing the best matches possible to ensure success. So being an ODSP employment service provider also provides additional funding opportunities for special projects and short-term training. For us, youth are a priority. We believe that by focusing on the youth, we can change tomorrow and the future for people with disabilities. And again, employment is a specialization. We have specific staff that are dedicated only to employment services. The employers know who they are. Those relationships are developed, and as well as the work that they do in job coaching, again, is a specialization. So, as John had mentioned, CLPS had an environmental crisis in the 1990s, which at the time caused a bit of concern, but in the end, it was a good decision, and we closed our sheltered workshop. However, I'm having some difficulty. However, in 2004, we still had a very thriving, active, segregated day program, at which time we contracted with Paul Muldoon to act as a consultant to conduct a complete review of our day program. At that time, we adopted a community-first philosophy. So if the activity or the service was available in the community, we weren't going to do it. We changed the names of our staff to community inclusion facilitators. They were no longer caregivers, support workers. Their job was to facilitate community connections and help build natural relationships. In 2006, we became an ODSP employment service provider, and we developed a volunteer program to help people connect to community through volunteer work. And then we shut the front door. There was no one new coming in. And a planning process began with one person at a time, using individualized approaches to connect people to community. And today, we still offer a very small seniors program. It's very much activity-based, so when people do come to the seniors program, they're there for a specific reason. So the Community First philosophy, it helped us develop community partnerships, and we looked at diversifying our funding. At Community Living Parry Sound, we look at every opportunity for new funding. As an ODSP service provider, we have been able to access funding for special projects as well as short-term training. The short-term training funding that we received has allowed us to create partnerships with Canadore College, and we've developed courses. Okay, thanks. So we've developed a hospitality and tourism course. It's a month-long course. At the end of that time, people graduate with women's certificates, first aid, CPR, smart serve, and safe food handling. All things that employers are looking for. So post-secondary education became a reality within our community. As well as the short-term training funding has enabled people to sign up and take courses, small engines, cooking, stained glass, anything that, computer courses, bookkeeping, anything that could help prepare people for employment. The other source of funding through the special projects funding that we've been able to do is 2 employer engagement events, and we've worked very closely with Odin. It was not something that we could do on our own. Joe Dale and Mark Wafer attended our first event. The special projects funding allowed us to rent a beautiful venue in Parry Sound, put on a very elaborate breakfast, and we had over 90 people attend. Tony Clement, our MPP, was there to open the event, and at the end, we had 5 employers who came forward and said, how can we help? The second year, we had an employer appreciation, and again, we had 4 new employers come forward at the end and say, how can we help? So again, reaching out to Odin, as well as Ready, Willing, and Able, getting connected, learning some best practices, was all very much part of our transformation. And then also being part of networks. Our employment staff are part of a network where we share resources and share ideas. So some takeaways. Employment requires more of a business approach and less of a human services. Joe has already mentioned that. Employers need to understand why hiring a person with a disability will improve their bottom line. When asked, employers will respond not out of charity, but because it makes good business sense. Employers learn better from each other. So during our employer engagement events, we had panels of our local employers, and they provided authentic and credible experiences where other employers could learn from that. And then some of our employers have become local champions. When we revisit people who have been successful in community-based employment, their lives are better not only financially, but with an increased sense of self-worth and the friendships they have developed on the job. We need to support youth to obtain work experiences at the same age as their non-disabled peers. That's not always possible at this time. This creates stronger work ethics and employment expectations, as well as greater opportunity for skill development. And telling our stories are impactful for community development. We use videos, and for anyone who attended our session this morning, we have a whole collection of videos. Again, we were able to develop those utilizing the ODSP Employment Services Special Project Funding. Focus on youth employment so that we can change the future for people with disabilities. So we're just going to show a video of an employment situation that we had this summer. This is Curtis, and the reason why I want to show this is that this very inclusive employment opportunity was again very unique. Curtis was hired as a junior ranger steward. There were only 4 youth hired, and Curtis was one of those 4 for this employment opportunity. It was a full-time summer job. Yeah. And it's helped, it really has set the expectation. This isn't, it's a different type of employment. It's not, it's not like what Joe had said about dishwasher or those entry-level jobs.
Can you tell me about like what a typical day working for the M&R looks like?
Well, we start at 8:30. We normally go and get the tools and stuff we need for the day and see what vehicle we're in. We have to drive to the place, and we normally don't get there till like 9:30 or 10 o'clock, and then we take lunch at 1. We really do something different every day.
Curtis came to us looking for a job opportunity. He wanted to work outside. He wanted a chance to work with his hands.
We interviewed Curtis. He showed a pretty good sort of interest in doing work in the community. He also was quite interested in the outdoors, and we look for somebody that's interested in the environment, first of all.
We've seen some bears and deer and bobcats.
Every day is different, so it never gets boring.
And it's really fun.
2 years ago at our employer engagement event, I had the opportunity to speak with members of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and talk about what they were looking for staff.
The M&R really tries to have as many people as they can now. They like to be inclusive.
Trevor was great to work with over the summer. He came to me. He was really interested in trying to learn more about Curtis's disability to find out ways that he could help him with any of the barriers he faced.
The interview was a little scary. I was shaking a little bit.
Having Link in the interview rewording the questions we were asking was really helpful.
It wasn't as bad as if I would go alone.
I mean, people with disabilities are better at a lot of things than people that don't have a disability.
Curtis is a hard-working young guy. He likes to be outside. He's not afraid to get dirty, go out and jump into a pond, things like that.
Being in the swamp was the scariest.
And when they tell you not to run, you're really not supposed to run on grass or you'll fall in.
We were kind of running all the way through it.
My favorite thing, I guess, would be releasing those baby turtles.
Curtis's summer contract with the Ranger program has been great for him.
And I know Curtis has had a few ideas when we've been out in the field that were good, and they're better than mine, so we went with them.
Now he knows that when the summer program is over, he feels a lot more confident going out and applying for other opportunities.
Link has been quite helpful. We have a lot of safety training, so it was nice to have somebody there to sort of help him out.
It was helpful the first 2 or 3 days because I didn't really know what I was doing or didn't know what was going to happen.
And we just felt like he was a great fit, and it was great to hear from the MNRF that they felt that way too.
We joke around a little bit.
Link is really proud of Curtis. We feel he's done a really great job with the Stewardship Youth Ranger program, and we feel that it gave him opportunities to have a better idea about what he wants to do in his career, and he's just much more prepared for his future.
This job's made me think a little bit about what I want to do. I might go to Fleming for urban forestry when I'm done high school.
Does anyone have a clean shirt?
We kind of look like we found you.
And It has set new expectations for Curtis, and he's even looking at post-secondary education. So, and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry were one of the employers that attended our very first employer engagement event. And Curtis is not the only person that is hired by the MNR. We also have youth who work at Kilbear Park, and for anyone who's been to Kilbear Park, I worked there as a teenager, and it's the best place to work in the summer. So this video, and again, this is a way that we celebrate our successes and share our stories with community. This video was developed for our very, very first employer engagement, and the employers that you see on the video were part of the panel that Joe moderated when he came to Parry Sound.
Can you tell me about like...
Just because I'm on disability doesn't mean that I can't do the job that required for me to come to work every day.
Everybody needs an equal opportunity.
Link has been a great help to become a job coach in me.
I think we'd be surprised at how we keep people with this disability in a box.
I just like to work.
Here at Link, we provide services to people who have a disability, whether it's physical, mental, intellectual. The three main sections that we help people with are employment planning, employment placement, and employment retention. Steve Ellis came to us looking for employment.
I do the digging, planting, and running the lawnmower. I like working with Rick.
He knows what his abilities are, and he knows the things that he struggles with.
You have to show them, and then if they can't do, then you show them the proper way. He's always happy and cheerful, which you always need on this type of a job.
My name is Jesse Loney. I worked at Sobeys for my summer job.
He just grabbed that job and took off.
My name is John Anderson. I'm the owner-operator of Parry Sound Sobeys. You have to be able to reach out to the community and find people with disabilities that can fit into your business, because it's good for not only the store, but good for the employees as well.
I enjoyed working there. It was fun. I got to do different things.
My name is Tano Pelto. I'm the front-end manager here. I think everyone loves Jesse here. I know he's really friendly and very outgoing person.
I was able to conquer the world, or conquer Sobeys at least.
I'm Travis Tuck, and I have a job cutting grass, shoveling snow, roofing, pouring concrete.
When it comes to things, you know, adding up the numbers and trying to punch numbers for what to charge people.
Taylor helped me with pretty much all the work, put together a business.
Having his own business was really important for him, and it was something that was just great, a great opportunity.
You know, a lot of people look, oh, he's on disability, how can he do that? I'd just like to see some of the community come in and see me do my work.
I am the owner of Dairy Queen in Parry Sound. Leonard's attitude is very positive. When something has to be completed, Leonard completes it and he's happy to do it.
I just say keep on bringing it.
He wants to do the best job all the time. He enjoys getting approval from the employer.
I'm the happiest guy in the world now. My life is great.
We can send in a job coach who we actually have on staff that will go in and work with them through that transition so that it's smooth and that it's not something that's going to be hard for the employer.
My name is Miguel. I'm a prep cook at Serenity, and I like enjoying working here. I love to cook, peel the potatoes, carrots, onions.
He wants to learn. He's willing to do just about anything to learn.
Serenity has been really nice to me. They've been a good people to work for.
My name's Samantha Hanna. I'm the Link employment intern. I've come into Serenity with Miguel and made a communication book. It's kind of like a checklist with all the tasks that he has to do.
Miguel would go to the book and look to see that his potato didn't look like the one in the book.
His day is full, and he's doing more things and learning more skills.
Very important to make sure your business is open to become an equal opportunity employer.
But I think what employers have to realize is it's to look past that disability, look at the ability of an individual. If they can fit in your workplace, it's a good fit all around for everybody.
Don't have the misconceptions that people with disability are going to be isolated to a specific job.
It's good for me to have a resource to go to.
Thank you for Serenity for giving me the job at coaching me through it.
Thanks for helping, working with me and everything.
It's okay to be afraid, but Link will always be there to help out. And once you get a little bit of help, it's not as scary.
Go out there, get a job, interview, do it.
If they had more community stuff like this for people that are on disability and helping them with their jobs and everything else, make sure the jobs are going smooth, I'm telling you, this would be a better world to work.
Was 3 years ago, and Jesse had a full-time summer job at Sobeys. He was then hired full-time upon graduation and was hired to stock shelves. He's now still a full-time employee, but he is a cashier, and he trains new employees to do the jobs that he once did. As well, Joe Scally, who's the Dairy Queen owner, he's also an OPP in our community. So Joe was just phenomenal in terms of being one of our panelists, because he certainly has a lot of credibility. Most people know him for his OPP work, but as an employer at the Dairy Queen, it was great. And for Travis, self-employment, having his own business was the best thing for him. A traditional kind of job would not have met who he is. But he runs his own business, he sets his own hours, and Link is there to assist with the invoicing and billing and submitting all the claims. So this year, we've done an employer engagement, we've done an employer appreciation. We wanted to maintain that momentum of being engaged with our community and with our employers. So we redesigned our website just recently. It's fully accessible. It did not meet all the accessibility standards. It now does. And we will very soon be on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So we're using a social media approach to maintain the employer engagement.
Thanks very much, Joanne. I was asked to give just a couple of minutes of an update on the Center for Excellence. This is a new initiative that was launched in the spring, and I'm just really going to quickly scurry through some of the major things that we do to help organizations that want to either build an employment program or improve their employment services. So we provide support to organizations, everything ranging from staff training to program review and an evaluation, program enhancement, and change management, so transition planning for organizations that want to do that. We do a lot of work in stakeholder engagement, presentations and speakers for family forums at AGMs, and information and advice on how to navigate the service system for families. We do a lot of work with businesses. A lot of agencies want to host employer breakfasts, employer awareness sessions. We can offer speakers for those. We can also sort of do a turnkey and organize the whole event for you and with you. If you want to engage your local businesses, chambers of commerce, and so on. We do a lot of assistance with agencies that are looking to create networks within their communities of other service providers to help them improve the way they operate and to share resources, as Joanne mentioned. We do a fair bit with government around consultation around program and policy design with all different branches of government, ODSP and developmental services, training colleges and universities, and the Ministry of Economic Development, Employment and Infrastructure. And finally, we do a lot of work with businesses. So we have a major initiative now doing outreach with businesses to educate and build awareness in the business community. Everything from motivational speakers to consulting assistants to businesses, audits of their current status and accessibilities, and providing them with tools and resources to improve their recruitment and onboarding of people who have a disability. So a lot of, and finally, and most importantly, I guess, is connecting those businesses to the service agencies that have the candidates and the support services to go along and ensure success. So that's, in a nutshell, what the Center for Excellence is up to, and I just rushed through because I wanted to give opportunity for questions. And if you just have a question, if you could stand up so that everybody can hear you and tell me who you'd like that question directed to. We've got like 10 minutes or less. No questions. James. Can you stand up so people can hear you?
My name is James Taylor. I've been working for a community to live in London, Ontario, for 17 years as a receptionist, and I continue working there through, I got the job through SCS, Appointment Services, and it's a great job. I enjoy what I do, and I like working with people and answering phones and talking to many different people. Thank you.
And I know from having been at Community Living London many times, James does a great job. Yes, at the back. Great idea. The whole idea of networking in different areas, different business communities, critical to our service agencies. Yes?
Yeah, youth engagement, do you work with the school boards that have co-op programs where the students do co-op placements and then maybe it follows up with a summer job, or does something like that ever happen?
It does in some communities. So each organization has a different kind of relationship with the Board of Education. Some boards of education are open and willing to those partnerships, some are not. You know, on a provincial level, we've been pushing the Ministry of Education around the whole co-op issue and how to improve it. But at the local level, I know of some organizations that have great working relationships with their school boards. They do exactly what you're talking about. They help with the co-ops and they transfer them into summer jobs and sometimes permanent jobs. But others are less collaborative. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, sorry. I'll come right to you, Jason, next.
Right now. Thank you. Good question. We have a great relationship with Canadore College, and the special project funding enables us to purchase 10 seats. The Canadore College has now taken over that course, so when they run it, they also advertise it to the broader community, so there can be registrations from other people in the community wanting to do the hospitality and tourism course. But we do partner with the high school to ensure that students at the high school have an opportunity to participate. Our experience has been that once people have had that comfort level taking the month-long course, they register for additional courses in the future. And then again, through the short-term training program, we're able to support that financially. And people have taken additional courses such as bookkeeping, computer courses, small engines, those type of things. Yes, yes, it has been. It's been a really good mutual partnership.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate, the old way we did things was we would replicate the college courses and run them through community living. But the whole idea now of going to the college and letting them do what they're equipped to do and supporting that is a much better way to go at it. Jason, you had a question?
gentleman that's the owner of the grocery store in town is one of the Rotary at Work champions in our community. When I left Stratford, Ontario, I guess 98 or something, I came to Campbellford, and I was pretty much like one of these individuals that didn't care where I had to go and didn't know where to really expect a job. Didn't write a resume. I actually draw my resume instead. So Community Living Council Brighton accepted me as an individual, and now I run a office supply store. Now I actually train the staff that come into our store. I train them everything. Our photocopiers, our color copiers. I do the deposit. I do everything.
It's great. I think we're going to wrap. We'll probably hang around for a few minutes if people want to talk to us afterwards. I'll turn it back to Peter. You're going to take that one.
Thanks very much, Joe and Joanne and John. And Provincial Executive Directors Coordinating Committee is very pleased to have sponsored this session. Some great stories about individuals, some great examples of organizational change, and I think some really revealing statistics and data as well. So really great information that was shared, and I think there's some closing remarks that Jordan you're going to make.
The 3 J's for your presentations, Joe, John, and Joanne. It's very interesting to hear. The potential is great. It's a matter of getting out there and making it happen. In the north where I'm from, things move very slowly. I think we're frozen stiff, and yet, Joanne, you're not that far south of us. Joe, you were invited to come and speak to people in North Bay, was it last winter? And I don't know what the turnout was. It was pathetic. We're going to try and find a way to have you come up with this new venture of yours, the Center for Excellence. I'm going to bring that back next week. Great, great. I'll be there. Yes. Thank you so much. So as a token of our appreciation, we'd like to let you have a bottle of jam that was made by Community Living Grimsby, Lincoln, and West Lincoln as a token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. And thank you. I'll get you a jar of jam too.
Oh, no, that's fine. Thanks, everybody.